I'm thrifty when it comes to art supplies and tools. If I can recycle and repurpose, I will, especially when it comes to making textures on the gel plate. These are my 7 favorite household items for gel printing. They make amazing textures and you probably already have most of them. Check your recycling bin and kitchen. We're gonna make way more than 7 prints. If you've gel printed before, you know how quickly one technique can lead to multiple prints. If you use the same color palette for all these prints, you can make a cohesive collage paper collection. These texture papers make wonderful book covers, journal pages, backgrounds, and collage papers. I collect bubble wrap. It's one of the best texture tools for the gel plate. I rolled out Prussian blue on the gel plate and I'm pressing 3 different sizes of bubble wrap into the paint. The first one is mini bubble wrap, then jumbo bubble wrap, and finally, standard size bubble wrap. As soon as I press them in, I remove them from the plate and they take some paint with them. I let the remaining paint dry on the plate before adding a second color to pick up the print. I'm using aqua green to pull the print onto a piece of rice paper. I always put the rice paper smooth side down onto the plate. I want to get the best print possible and pick up all the paint, so I let the paint and paper dry on the plate. I like to use a hairdryer on low to help speed up the drying process. When I'm certain the paper is completely dry, I slowly pull the print. You see why I love bubble wrap? It's such a fun pattern and it's so reliable. That's why I used bubble wrap as the example texture in my gel printing for beginners video. Want help remembering all these gel printing ideas? Grab these free printable prompt cards. They have photos of each technique and step-by-step instructions. You can print them as large 3.5 by 5 inch cards or fold them in half and glue to make smaller double-sided cards. They're available now in my free resource library at the link in the video description. You can also pull bubble wrap prints immediately without using a second color. To demonstrate, I'm going to print onto this piece of sewing pattern tissue with jumbo bubble wrap. I rolled out turquoise blue, then I pressed a large piece of jumbo bubble wrap onto the plate. I quickly peeled off the bubble wrap and then laid down the tissue while the paint was still wet. I used a piece of scrap deli paper to help pick up the paint that extended beyond the tissue. Then I let the paint and the tissue dry completely before pulling the print. This is a great technique to use when you want the background paper to show through in the final print, or you want to make transparent collage paper. This sewing tissue can be used as a transparent layer in collage. It instantly gives an aged appearance to anything it's glued over. You can see the wrinkles the tissue left behind on the gel plate. I'm going to leave those there and hopefully they'll pick up in my next print. One of the easiest ways to make lines on the gel plate is with corrugated cardboard. To prepare a piece of cardboard, saturate the paper on one side with water and wait 10 to 15 minutes. Then peel the paper off to reveal the corrugated core. Keep the paper on the back side for stability. I rolled out aqua green and then pressed the corrugated cardboard into the paint. The paint sticks to the mountains on the cardboard and leaves stripes on the gel plate. I quickly put a piece of craft colored copy paper onto the wet paint. I used deli paper to pick up the excess paint around the copy paper since it's smaller than my 9 by 12 inch gel plate. I let the paper dry completely on the plate before pulling up the print. Look at that. The wrinkles left behind from the last print showed up nicely as an extra layer of texture on this print. I really love printing letter size paper on my 9 by 12 inch plate because I can print edge to edge borderless prints. Another way to use corrugated cardboard is to cut it up into smaller pieces or shapes. Here I have 2 rectangular shapes. I attached some tape to the back to use as a handle. I rolled out Prussian blue paint and I'm planning to print onto a cleanup sheet I used in my previous gel printing video. I'm using the cardboard pieces to stamp a design across the gel plate. I'm trying to work quickly so the paint doesn't dry. I pressed down the pre-printed rice paper right away. I let the paint dry completely on the plate. When I pull the print, you can see the cool linear pattern and how this one layer completely transformed the base paper I printed on. I think cotton swabs are the best way to doodle and do mark making on a gel plate. They are so good at removing paint on the plate. Just make sure you have several swabs handy because you have to switch to a new one when the cotton gets saturated with paint. After doodling loops all over the plate, I let this layer of paint dry. Even though I use my hairdryer to speed up the drying time, I know parts of this print are still wet. The cotton swabs leave thick ridges of paint that don't dry all the way. So, before I pull the print, I press a piece of scrap deli paper onto the print to lift any bits of thick paint that are still wet. You can see right here the paint that was still wet and transferred to this deli paper. Now that all the paint on the plate is dry, I'm rolling out a lighter color to pull the print. I press down a piece of regular copy paper and let it dry on the plate. I don't think I let it dry quite long enough because you'll see some white areas in the final print where the paint didn't transfer. The paint is still on the plate in those spots. Because all those white spots are inside the doodle lines and the darker background color is solid, I think it looks all right. It's kind of a cool effect. If you have a silicone pastry brush or a basting brush in your kitchen, you need to steal it now and turn it into an art supply. This one came with a set of silicone utensils and I already had another one, so this one is dedicated to art. I rolled out Prussian blue on the gel plate, then I used the pastry brush to paint long strokes across the plate. Be careful when you get to the edges as the brush might splatter some paint. After doing the horizontal strokes, I did vertical strokes. I'll show you another fun pattern to do with the pastry brush after this one. I let the paper dry on the plate before pulling the print. The pattern reminds me of burlap or a loosely woven fabric. I love using Prussian blue or semi-opaque colors for this technique because with the paint transparency, you get a lot of depth in the final print. There's light, medium, and dark values of the Prussian blue. I'm setting up for another pastry brush print. I'm using Prussian blue again, but this time instead of lines, I'm painting swirls with the pastry brush. You can overlap the swirls and go over the plate multiple times. While the paint was still wet, I pressed down the copy paper. I let it dry on the plate. The first time I tried this technique, I created this gorgeous swirly pattern that I printed directly into one of my mark-making journals. Now, I have a full page of that swirly goodness. When you look at this print, it's hard to believe it was all done with just one color and one layer of paint. I attempted to make another swirly print with the turquoise blue, but I could tell instantly I put too much paint on the plate. If the paint layer is too thick, the pastry brush will remove some paint, but not all the way down to the gel plate. You can see the swirly texture here, but there's very few spots where you can see the bare plate. Since I knew this print wasn't going to turn out the way I hoped, I grabbed a piece of deli paper to pull this paint off. Then something really cool happened. Because the paint was so thick, the moisture made the deli paper wrinkle up. I let the deli paper dry on the plate and then pulled it up. The wrinkles made a really cool crackle effect on the print. As a bonus, the crackle lines were left behind on the plate. So I rolled out unbleached titanium and put down a piece of copy paper. I let that dry fully. It made another amazing crackled print. So from one failed attempt at making swirls, I ended up with 2 surprise prints and a new technique to play with. Hopefully I can recreate the crackle effect in the future with a thick layer of paint and deli paper. If you like this aged look, I have a few more wrinkly and grungy texture ideas coming up at the end of the video. I accidentally made a wrinkly crackled effect with deli paper, but a more reliable way to create a wrinkly effect on the gel plate is with crumpled paper. This is a piece of brown packing paper that I've crumpled up and used before. You can use it a couple of times. Just crumple it again and flatten it back out. I rolled out the turquoise blue and then pressed my crumpled paper onto the plate. I removed the crumpled paper to reveal the wrinkle pattern left behind in the paint. I let that layer of paint dry. Then I added a layer of aqua green to pull the print onto rice paper. This technique is like a 2-for-1 because the crumpled paper also gets printed. This next technique has so many possibilities, and it's another 2-for-1. To get ready, I'm folding a piece of tissue paper into an accordion. Then I'm folding it back and forth into a small triangle and creasing it really well. I carefully unfold and open the tissue paper. You can see it has an interesting crease pattern now. I rolled out Prussian blue on the gel plate and pressed the tissue paper into the paint and remove it quickly. That's the first print. The crease pattern is left behind on the plate. I let that dry and then added a layer of unbleached titanium to pull the print. I used rice paper to pull this second print. Both prints have an identical crease pattern but look completely different. You can play with different ways to fold and crease the tissue paper. I wanted to see if the same technique works with deli paper, so I folded a piece of deli paper in a different pattern and opened it up. I rolled out Prussian blue and pressed the deli paper into the paint. It appears to be working, but it looks like the creases smooth out more into the paint. So when I pull up the deli paper, you can see the crease pattern isn't as pronounced. I let the remaining paint dry on the plate. Then I added a layer of aqua green to pull the final print. It's a little bit blotchy, but you can see the crease pattern, which means deli paper does work for this folding technique. But I think the tissue paper worked much better, and since it's thinner, it was easier to fold and get good creases. This next technique is a 3-for-1 or more. With just one technique, I'm going to make 3 unique prints. For this technique, all you need is cornstarch. I rolled out a layer of turquoise blue and then sprinkled cornstarch on top of the wet paint. I quickly put down a piece of tissue paper and pressed it in really well around the clumps of the cornstarch. The cornstarch is acting like a resist, while the tissue paper absorbs all the rest of the paint around the cornstarch. You can use any paper to pick up that paint, but I prefer using tissue paper because the spots where the cornstarch are will be blank. With tissue paper, those blank spots will go transparent if you glue the tissue paper down with a clear medium. It's a really cool way to layer this grungy texture in a collage. This technique is so fun because you don't have to wait for the paint to dry between layers. Right away, you can add another layer of paint and sprinkle on some more cornstarch. This time, I'm using craft colored copy paper to pick up the paint. The craft color will show through on the print wherever the cornstarch is blocking the paint. There's no need to let the paper dry on the plate for these clean-off prints. Just press it down well and then lift it right away. The first 2 prints are bonus prints you get from removing the paint from around the cornstarch. You can do as many layers like this as you want. I recommend working from dark to light for paint colors. I'm going to stop here and pull the final print. I rolled out unbleached titanium and pressed down a piece of white copy paper. For the final print, I let the paper dry completely on the plate. When I pull the print, you'll see it pulls all the paint that was under the cornstarch, creating this amazing layered texture. During this process, most of the cornstarch gets mixed into the paint, but if there's any loose cornstarch left, you can just brush it off the prints once the paint is dry. This is the one technique of all of these I think I could do for hours on end. It's so fun to try different amounts of cornstarch and different color combinations. Don't forget to grab the printable prompt cards so you can remember how to do all of these techniques. Get the free prompt cards at the link in the video description below. If you're new to gel printing or want a refresher on the basics and some easy tips to instantly improve your gel prints, watch my Gel Printing for Beginners video next.